these are the stories making the headlines at this hour. The US and UK have launched airstrikes to hit back at Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi rebels in response to their repeated attacks in the Red Sea. The Houthis claim they are targeting vessels linked to Israel as the conflict in the Middle East threatens to escalate. The U.S. has imposed sanctions on Russian entities and one individual involved in arms deals with North Korea. While both Pyongyang and Moscow denied the allegations, the South Korean government says the arms transfers are evident. South Korea's economy shows signs of recovery in the last month of 2023 on increased tech exports, but the pace of recovery remains sluggish in private spending and investment. Good afternoon. The U.S. and UK have launched strikes to hit back at Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi rebels in response to their repeated attacks in the Red Sea. The Houthis claim they are targeting vessels only linked to Israel. Ian Jin has the latest.
U.S. and UK naval forces in the Red Sea have launched airstrikes against Houthi rebel targets across Yemen. According to U.S. officials, warship-launched Tomahawk cruise missiles and fighter jets hit more than 12 sites, including the capital Sana'a and the Houthi Red Sea port stronghold of Hodeidah. And the targets included logistical hubs, air defense systems, and arms depots. Just days before the overnight strikes in Yemen, American and British naval forces shot down 21 Houthi drones and missiles fired towards the southern Red Sea, which was the Houthis' largest attack to date in that region. Houthi rebels claim they are only attacking ships linked to Israel or heading to Israeli ports. But during a White House briefing on Wednesday, U.S. National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby called the attacks by Yemen-based militants in the Red Sea unlawful and escalatory.
So we'll say it again. These attacks against vessels in the Red Sea pose a direct threat to lives, to freedom of navigation, and to global trade in one of the world's most critical waterways. And despite what the Houthis may say, they are threatening and targeting commercial vessels with ties to countries all over the world, many of which have no connection to Israel whatsoever. These attacks are unlawful, they're reckless, and they are escalatory.
The Houthis have defied calls from the UN and the broader international community to halt their missile and drone attacks on Red Sea shipping routes, as well as warnings from the United States of consequences if they failed to do so. There have been 27 such attacks to date, disrupting international commerce on the key route between Europe and Asia that accounts for about 15% of the world's shipping traffic. The ongoing strikes are one of the most dramatic demonstrations to date of the widening of the Israel-Hamas war in the Middle East since its eruption in October. Ian Jin, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, in the Gulf of Oman, Iran has captured an oil tanker that had been subject to dispute between the U.S. and Iran. There's also speculation over the link between the seizure and the ongoing tensions in the Middle East. Shin-Young reports.
The Iranian Navy seized an oil tanker, the Saint Nicholas, in the Gulf of Oman on Thursday morning local time, according to Iran's state-run Tasnim news agency. The media outlet reported that the action was taken in compliance with an order from an Iranian court and was allegedly in retaliation for the confiscation of the same tanker and Iranian oil by the U.S. last year. According to the BBC, the oil tanker was in transit between the Iraqi port of Basra to its intended destination in Turkey when it was boarded by masked gunmen who ordered that the vessel's course be altered toward an Iranian port. There is believed to be 1 Greek and 18 Filipino nationals aboard as crew members on the Marshall Islands flagged ship. The location of the seizure is the Strait of Hormuz, a vital oil trading route for major oil production countries, including Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Iran, and Iraq. 1/3 of the world's natural gas consumption and 1/6 of the world's oil passes through the region. In response, the White House strongly condemned the action and urged the ship's immediate release.
The Iranian government should immediately release the ship and its crew. These provocative and unacceptable actions need to stop. We'll continue to work with our allies and partners to deter and confront the full range of Iran's concerning and destabilizing behavior in close coordination, of course.
There is also speculation that the seizure may also be retaliation for ongoing tension in the Middle East. Iran has previously warned of a strong response to the conflict in Gaza, as well as the assassination of a Hezbollah leader and airstrikes on Iran-linked facilities in Syria. And with attacks by Yemen's Houthi rebels on ships passing through the Red Sea, the capture of the St. Nicholas is expected to further intensify tensions in the region. 신하영, Arirang News.
The U.S. has imposed sanctions on 3 Russian entities and 1 individual involved in transfer of North Korean ballistic missiles to Russia. While both Pyongyang and Moscow denied the allegations, Seoul says the arms trade is evident. Kim Jung-sil reports.
The U.S. State Department has imposed sanctions on 3 Russian entities and 1 individual involved in the transfer of North Korean ballistic missiles to Russia, which then used them against Ukraine. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, in a statement on Thursday, said North Korea's transfer of ballistic missiles to Russia supports Moscow's war of aggression, increases the suffering of the Ukrainian people, and undermines the global non-proliferation regime. He added that the U.S. continues to closely monitor any Russian-provided support to North Korea in return for these weapons and will use all available tools to designate and expose individuals and entities involved in the arms transfers. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Zelensky said Thursday that Russia has received over 1 million pieces of ammunition from North Korea. Speaking to reporters in the Estonian capital Tallinn during a tour of the Baltic region, he called for more support from Western allies to defend against Russian missiles and drone strikes. The Russian deputy head of the Security Council gave a chilling warning on the same day.
It's known that we use different carriers with different loads, except for the nuclear one just yet.
Regarding Wednesday's UN Security Council meeting criticizing Pyongyang-Moscow arms transfers, North Korea released a statement denying the allegations. The regime state-run Korean Central News Agency reported on Friday that North Korean ambassador to the UN, Kim Sung, said Pyongyang doesn't feel the need to comment on America's, quote, unfounded accusations. South Korea's Unification Ministry told reporters on Friday that North Korea has avoided giving a clear denial of the arms transfers. The ministry added that the arms transfers between Russia and North Korea are evident and that they are a violation of UN Security Council resolutions and an illegal act. Kim Jung-sil, Arirang News.
Top diplomats of South Korea and the U.S. have reaffirmed their efforts to firmly respond to any kind of provocation from North Korea. South Korea's new Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yeol held a phone call with his American counterpart, Antony Blinken, on Thursday evening and discussed issues on North Korea and bilateral relations, as well as trilateral relations with Japan. The 2 officials agreed to close cooperation as they condemned the North's nuclear and missile development and its military collaboration with Russia. South Korea's top court has once again ruled in favor of a Korean victim of Japan's wartime forced labor, ordering a Japanese company to pay a significant amount of compensation. Similar rulings were made in separate cases last month. Bae Eun-ji explains.
Mr. Kim was taken from his home in Korea to Japan in March 1943 and was forced to work in a mill for Nippon Steel without being paid until he was able to return home in 1946 after Korea gained independence from Japan. He died in 2012, and the family of the late victim filed a suit against the Japanese company in 2015. On Thursday, South Korea's Supreme Court upheld the appellate court's decision, ordering Nippon Steel to pay 100 million Korean won, or about $76,000, in compensation to Mr. Kim's wife and their 2 children. The top court made similar rulings in separate cases in December, ordering Nippon Steel and other Japanese companies, such as Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, to pay as much as 150 million Korean won, or about $111,000, to each victim. But the Japanese companies are likely to continue refusing to pay, and the Korean government is expected to compensate the victims instead, using funds procured through a public foundation. Such a plan was announced earlier this year to improve relations with Japan.
Since last March, following the announcement of our government's plan to resolve the forced labor issue, we have been paying the delayed compensation interest to the plaintiffs through the Foundation for Victims of Forced Mobilization by Imperial Japan. There's no change in our policy to continue making such payments in accordance with ongoing court decisions.
Japanese companies have yet to pay the previously ordered compensation, claiming the statute of limitations has expired. But last month, the top court clarified that this would not be allowed. 배은지, Arirang News.
South Korea's economy shows signs of recovery in the last month of 2023 on increased tech exports, but the pace of recovery remains sluggish in private spending and investment. Moon Hae-ryun has more.
South Korea's economy overall is showing signs of recovery, with sharp growth in exports and more stunted growth in facility and construction investment and private spending. The Economic Green Book released by the Ministry of Economy and Finance on Friday showed that while inflation is slowing and semiconductor exports are increasing, external conditions are continuing to contribute to economic uncertainties.
Economic uncertainties continue with geopolitical tensions in the Middle East and the war in Ukraine, and there are mixed expectations of improvement in the IT industry and concerns about a weakening global recovery.
December 2023 saw an overall growth of 5.1% in exports compared to the same month the year before, on the back of a recovery in South Korea's tech industry. Outbound shipments of chips increased by 13% on year, while ship and car exports jumped by 47% and 18% respectively. South Korea's exports performed well generally in the final month of 2023, as more than half of the country's 15 key export sectors saw a rise. The start of 2024 also saw a rebound in exports to China for the first time in 20 months. Consumer sentiment also showed an improvement, with the Consumer Sentiment Index rising by more than 2 points compared to November. The on-year increase for consumer prices recorded in December was the lowest seen since July at 3.2%. That being said, retail sales, a key gauge of private spending, fell by 0.3% on year. Retail sales in South Korea have been declining since the second quarter of last year, and while consumer sentiment was high in December, the government predicted that it was the major discount events for vehicles and other items that contributed to the high CSI. The price of fruit led an upsurge in prices, with oil prices on a downward trend in line with falling global crude oil prices. Facility and construction investment saw a decline on year in November, while production slowed for the service industry. The Finance Ministry said it would continue to manage potential risks, such as real estate project financing, and prioritize recovering price stability. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
South Korean auto giant Hyundai Motor and its affiliate Kia saw sales hit a record high in the U.S. market last year. According to the automakers on Thursday local time, the two combined sold some 1.65 million units in the U.S. market in 2023, up around 12% compared to the year before. That is a record high for annual sales in the U.S. market. Company officials said that this was mostly due to strong demand for eco-friendly vehicles, recreational vehicles, and Hyundai's luxury vehicle brand, Genesis. The U.S. is seeing inflation picking up again, with prices in December pushed up by rising shelter and healthcare costs. Now, eyes are when and how many rate cuts are to come this year. Lee Seung-jae has more.
U.S. consumer prices rose 0.3% in December, higher than the market expectation of 0.2%. On a 12-month basis, U.S. CPI rose 3.4%, also exceeding market expectations of 3.2%. Core CPI, which excludes volatile food and energy prices, also rose 0.3% for the month and 3.9% year-on-year. However, the on-year core reading was the lowest since May 2021. The larger-than-expected gains in consumer prices come on the back of rising shelter prices and healthcare. Shelter prices rose 0.5% for the month and accounted for more than half the core CPI increase. On year, shelter costs rose 6.2%, or roughly two-thirds of the rise in inflation. The U.S. Fed believes significant progress has been made in stabilizing prices, but the current interest rate level will have to be maintained for the time being. However, Fed and market consensus has been split on the number of rate cuts in 2024. While the Fed believes there will be 3 rate cuts in the year, markets expect 6 rate cuts this year. Meanwhile, on the first day of Bitcoin ETF trading in the U.S. on Thursday, prices of Bitcoin rose sharply before dropping back down. According to American cryptocurrency exchange Coinbase, the price of Bitcoin exceeded $49,000 on some exchanges in the early trading period, but fell back down to the 46,000 range later in the afternoon. Citing experts, a CNBC report said that Bitcoin prices will go down for the time being due to profit-taking. The second largest cryptocurrency by market capitalization, Ethereum, also saw a sharp increase in its price. The U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission approved the listing and trading of Bitcoin spot ETF, with trading beginning on the New York Stock Exchange on Thursday. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
In Las Vegas, at one of the world's most influential annual tech events, the CES, South Korean companies, both big and small, are making a splash. Our business correspondent Lee Soo-jin tells us more.
The Consumer Electronics Show 2024 has returned in full force. And South Korea is making its presence known with the third most companies participating this year.
The energy is so, full and excitement, and I think everybody's just wondering, what are we going to discover? What's new? What's exciting? And in particular, for me, it's what do global companies bring?
With AI taking center stage at this year's CES, Samsung revealed at the event the AI-integrated revamped robot companion, Bali. The new and improved Bali has built-in projectors that can stream phone calls and cooking videos onto the walls of people's homes. Another key theme was mobility, or more specifically, air mobility, as flying cars stole the show. Supernal, Hyundai Motors' advanced air mobility company, unveiled a prototype for its latest electric vertical takeoff and landing vehicle that is expected to be up and running by 2028. But it's not just big-name South Korean companies that are attracting attention, as a record number of South Korean startups were awarded innovation awards. Local startups also emphasize the importance of advanced technologies.
We were able to win innovation awards in both the drones and unmanned systems and the human security for all categories, because the marine salvage and recovery market is becoming increasingly influenced by the robotics market.
Sheco is a startup that develops environmental solutions, and its aquatic cleaning drone uses a rotor to direct water inside the device, where it separates the pollutants with mesh filters. It then discharges the purified water back into the ocean. Another startup that won an innovation award is The Little Cat, a digital pet healthcare company. It took home the accolade for its device that measures body composition in cats. The app shows various information such as the weight, BMI, fat and protein level, and recommends cat food based on the data. And for these startups, CES is important because it opens the door to more business opportunities.
We've already had buyers and distributors from all over the world contact us thanks to CES.
With CES drawing to a close, there's no doubt that South Korean companies have once again helped provide a closer look into the future of consumer technology. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at the latest news in the world now. In Papua New Guinea, the Prime Minister declared a 14-day state of emergency in the country's capital on Thursday after at least 16 people were killed in rioting. Papua New Guinea authorities reported on Thursday that 9 people died in the capital Port Moresby, with a further 7 killed in the city of Lae, amid widespread looting and arson in riots which began on Wednesday. Prime Minister James Marape said on Thursday that more than 1,000 soldiers are on standby to step in whatever necessary as shops and cars were torched and looted. He also suspended Papua New Guinea's chief of police and top officials in the finance and treasury departments. Police and public sector workers went on a strike on Wednesday over a pay cut, which the government claimed to be an administrative glitch. The unrest follows the growing tension over high unemployment and rising costs. In Poland's capital, Warsaw, tens of thousands of opposition supporters gathered outside the country's parliament on Thursday in protest against the new Liberal government's change to state media and imprisonment of 2 former ministers. President Andrzej Duda, an ally of the ousted populist Law and Justice Party, said on Thursday that he had started the procedures to pardon the 2 former ministers who were jailed this week for abuse of power. The new pro-European government, led by Prime Minister Donald Tusk, has been reversing some policies of its populist predecessor. Germany's foreign minister on Thursday criticized China's aggressive actions in the South China Sea, saying that it violates the rights of other countries like the Philippines. Germany's top diplomat, Annalena Baerbock, held talks on Thursday with Philippines President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. and other top officials on a 2-day official visit. She said that Germany was prepared to help de-escalate growing tensions and set up mechanisms for peaceful resolutions of disputes. China claims sovereignty over almost the entirety of the South China Sea, cutting into the exclusive economic zones of Vietnam, the Philippines, Malaysia, Brunei, and Indonesia. Beijing has rejected The Hague's Permanent Court of Arbitration 2016 ruling that China's claims have no legal basis. The Vatican, on Thursday, unveiled plans for the restoration of the monumental baldachin, the canopy over the main altar of St. Peter's Basilica. The $770,000 restoration and conservation project, funded entirely by the Knights of Columbus, a Catholic fraternal organization, marks the first comprehensive work on the structure in 250 years. The 10-story tall baldachin was commissioned by Pope Urban VIII and created by Gian Lorenzo Bernini in the 17th century. The Vatican has pledged to complete the work on Bernini's masterpiece in time for Pope Francis's 2025 Jubilee. Kim Xiang, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. Air quality has improved in most of central parts of the country, but Gyeongsang-Namdo province and nearby areas will be trapped under high levels of ultrafine dust through the latter half of the day today. The air quality should improve later in the day, though, with northwesterly winds blowing in. We are supposed to have the coldest temperatures of the season around this time, but we have more days with polluted air with mild temperatures. This weekend looks to be another bearable one, even with normal air quality. But just beware, there's a mix of rain and snow in the forecast on Sunday in many places. Sunny skies are welcomed by many. Meanwhile, eastern parts of the country are quite windy today. Seoul gets up to 4 degrees Celsius, Busan topping out at 12 degrees this afternoon. Sunday's precipitation will bring colder air to the country early next week, but there will not be a major cold snap to worry about. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
The historic first trading of Bitcoin ETFs began in the U.S., but it is not possible to invest in them in Korea. Theoretically speaking, domestic investors can purchase them like overseas stocks and ETFs, brokered by domestic securities companies. But financial authorities confirmed that such an act is a violation of law, as the Capital Markets Act does not cover virtual assets. There's also high volatility to consider, which is also why the U.S. has also been selective in approving Bitcoin ETFs. But it seems like Bitcoin has become an investment asset, said the Bank of Korea Governor Lee Chang-yong on Thursday, adding that it is time to test its value and stability.